Have you ever watched someone hand your sister a future while they handed you a reason to disappear? I have. And I didn't cry about it. Not once. My name is Claire. I'm 31 years old, and I am a board-certified emergency physician at one of the most respected trauma centers in the Pacific Northwest. I have saved lives in rooms where minutes meant everything. I have held the hands of strangers in their worst moments and stayed calm when everyone else was falling apart. But none of that matters to my mother. What matters to my mother is that my sister Danielle got married first. I want you to understand something before I tell you what happened at that wedding. I want you to understand the kind of household I grew up in, because without that, none of the rest of this makes sense. My mother and father had 2 daughters. Danielle was born 3 years before me, and from the moment I was old enough to notice things, I noticed that she was the one they noticed. Danielle got the bedroom with the window seat. Danielle got the new clothes. Danielle got the car on her 16th birthday, and I got a card that said they believed in me and a bus pass. I am not exaggerating. I still have the card somewhere. I kept it because I thought one day I might need proof that it happened. My father was a quieter version of my mother's favoritism. He didn't celebrate Danielle loudly. He just didn't see me. When I made honor roll in 8th grade, he nodded from behind his newspaper. When Danielle got a C- in sophomore English, he took her out for ice cream to cheer her up. That was the dynamic. That was just how things were. I spent most of my childhood learning how to need less. By the time I was in high school, I had already decided that medicine was my way out. Not because someone encouraged me. Because I found a book about the human body in the school library when I was 14, and I read it 3 times and I thought, this is something they cannot take from me. Knowledge is the one thing that cannot be redistributed to your prettier, more charming older sister. I studied. I worked. I got a full scholarship to the University of Washington. My mother's response was to throw a dinner party for Danielle's acceptance to a local community college that same week. I am not making that up either. I left for Seattle 2 months later with 2 suitcases and a determination so quiet it scared me sometimes. I changed my last name before my first year of medical school. My mother's maiden name had been Mitchell. I had always liked it. I became Claire Mitchell, and I told myself it was just paperwork. It was just a name. But it was also a door closing behind me, and I knew it. I didn't cut contact right away. I still called on birthdays. I still came home for Thanksgiving the first 2 years, but every visit was the same. My mother would ask Danielle about her boyfriend, her apartment, her job at the real estate office. She would ask me if I was eating enough, and whether I'd thought about something more stable than medicine. Medicine. As if I had told her I wanted to be a street performer. The last Thanksgiving I attended, I was in my 2nd year of residency. I hadn't slept more than 5 hours in 3 days. I drove 4 hours to be at that table. My father asked Danielle if she and Marcus were thinking about getting engaged. My mother started crying happy tears before Danielle even answered. I sat there with mashed potatoes going cold on my plate, and I thought, I drove 4 hours for this. I drove home that night instead of staying over. I told them I had an early shift. I did have an early shift. But I also just couldn't sit in that house one more morning and watch my mother make Danielle's coffee exactly the way she liked it and ask me if I wanted some of the juice. After that, the calls got shorter. Then they got monthly. Then they stopped. I graduated from residency. I got my board certification. I was recruited to a trauma center in Portland, Oregon. I moved there with a car full of boxes and an apartment lease under the name Claire Mitchell, and not a single person in my family knew my new address. I want to be clear about something. I was not doing this out of anger. Anger had burned itself out years ago. What I felt was closer to relief. The kind of relief you feel when you finally take off shoes that were always the wrong size. You don't hate the shoes. You're just done pretending they fit. I built a new life. I made friends at the hospital. I had a mentor, Dr. Renata Okafor, who was the kind of woman my mother should have been direct, demanding, and completely certain that I was capable of more than I currently believed. Renata was the one who nominated me for the Oregon Medical Association's Rising Physician Award in my 3rd year at the trauma center. I told her she was being dramatic. She told me to submit the paperwork. I submitted the paperwork. And that is where this story takes a turn I did not see coming. The Oregon Medical Association holds their annual recognition gala every spring at the Nines Hotel in downtown Portland. It is a formal event. Black tie. 500 physicians, hospital administrators, and major donors filling a ballroom that costs more per hour than most people make in a week. I had attended once before as Renata's guest, and I remembered thinking it felt like a world that had nothing to do with the emergency department at 2 in the morning. This year, I was attending as a finalist. There were 3 of us up for the Rising Physician Award. I knew the other 2, a cardiologist named James, who everyone liked, and a pediatric surgeon named Priya, who deserved every award that had ever existed and several that didn't yet. I told myself I was just honored to be nominated. I mostly believed it. 3 weeks before the gala, Renata forwarded me the donor program for the evening. It was a PDF, 17 pages, listing every organization and individual who had contributed to the OMA Foundation that year. She highlighted my name in the finalists section and added a note that said, "Wear something that photographs well." I scrolled through the rest of the document out of mild curiosity. I almost missed it. Page 11. Corporate sponsors, gold and platinum tier. And then, halfway down the page, under a real estate development group called Meridian Pacific Properties, a name I did not recognize, was a contact listing for the company's charitable giving division. The director of charitable giving for Meridian Pacific Properties was listed as Danielle Hartwell. Hartwell. Marcus's last name. She had married him. I sat very still for a moment. Then I scrolled further. Meridian Pacific Properties was a platinum sponsor of the OMA Foundation Gala. Platinum sponsorship, according to the program, included 2 reserved tables of 8 at the event, prominent logo placement, and a speaking acknowledgement from the stage. My sister would be in that ballroom. I closed the PDF. I opened it again. I read the listing 3 more times. Danielle Hartwell, Director of Charitable Giving, Meridian Pacific Properties, Platinum Sponsor. I thought about calling Renata. I thought about explaining the situation. I thought about a lot of things in those next few minutes, sitting at my kitchen table with my coffee getting cold. Then I thought about something my mother said to me when I was 17, and I had told her I wanted to go to medical school. She had sighed in that particular way she had, a long exhale through her nose, and she said, "Claire, not everyone is built for that kind of pressure. Maybe think about something you'd actually be good at." I closed my laptop. I went to bed. And I decided I was going to walk into that ballroom and accept whatever happened. I did not tell anyone. I did not warn Danielle. I did not call my mother. I did not, for 1 second, consider withdrawing from the finalist list. I had earned my place in that room. I had earned it in 12-hour shifts and overnight calls and years of studying, while my mother threw dinner parties I wasn't invited to. I was going to walk in, and I was going to be exactly who I had become, and whatever my sister did with that information was her business. The night of the gala, I wore a navy dress that Renata had helped me choose. Simple, tailored, the kind of thing that disappears in the best way possible and lets your face do the work. I arrived alone. I checked my coat. I accepted a glass of sparkling water from a passing tray and stood near the window looking out at the city and thought, I live here now. This is my city. These are my colleagues. This is my life. I found my seat at the finalist table. James was already there, nervous in a pleasant way, straightening his name card. Priya arrived a few minutes later and immediately made a joke about the centerpiece that made everyone relax. I liked them both. I was glad to be there. The room filled. The lights dimmed slightly for the pre-dinner reception. I was looking at the evening's program when I heard a laugh from somewhere across the room. I knew that laugh. I had grown up 3 feet from that laugh. I did not turn around right away. I took a breath. I picked up my water glass. And then slowly, as if I were just scanning the room the way anyone does at a large event, I turned. Danielle was standing near the platinum sponsor tables on the far side of the ballroom. She was wearing a green dress and talking to a man I didn't recognize, gesturing with her hands the way she always had when she was telling a story she found funny. Marcus was beside her, shorter than I remembered from photographs, with the look of someone who had gotten used to nice rooms. She hadn't seen me. I turned back to my table. I picked up my fork and I ate my dinner. Here is what I want you to understand about that moment, because I think it is the most important part of everything I am about to tell you. I did not feel triumphant sitting there. I did not feel vindicated. I felt something much quieter than that. I felt like a person who had done the work and shown up, and was exactly where she was supposed to be, and whatever noise surrounded that fact was just noise. My sister being across the room was noise. My mother's voice in my memory was noise. I had gotten very good at identifying noise. The dinner ended. The program began. The OMA president, a tall woman named Dr. Carolyn Vance, took the podium and welcomed the room. She thanked the sponsors. She read their names from the list. She thanked Meridian Pacific Properties. I watched Danielle's table applaud. I watched Danielle smile and nod graciously. She still hadn't looked my direction. The awards began. There were 4 categories before mine. I watched colleagues I respected stand up and accept recognition for work that mattered. I applauded for all of them. I meant it. Then Dr. Vance introduced the Rising Physician category. She described the award. She talked about what it meant to demonstrate not just clinical excellence but leadership, mentorship, and commitment to expanding access to emergency care in underserved communities. That last part was the project I had spent 2 years building a partnership with 3 community health clinics in East Portland to provide emergency consultation services to patients who couldn't navigate the main hospital system. Renata had helped. A team of residents had helped. I had done the paperwork at midnight more times than I could count. Dr. Vance read the names of the 3 finalists. James Kowalski, Priya Mehta, Claire Mitchell. I heard my name in that room, and I felt my spine straighten. And then I heard something else. From across the ballroom, from the direction of the platinum sponsor tables, I heard a sound that I recognized immediately, even though I hadn't heard it in years. A sharp intake of breath, the kind that precedes either laughter or shock, the kind my mother made when she was surprised. But my mother wasn't in the room. Danielevas. I did not look at her. I kept my eyes on the stage. Dr. Vance announced the winner, Claire Mitchell. The room applauded. Renata, 3 tables away, made a sound that was somewhere between a cheer and a sob. James shook my hand. Priya hugged me. I stood up, and I smoothed the front of my dress, and I walked to the stage. The podium had a small light that caught me from below, and I knew the room was looking at me, all 500 people, and somewhere in that room my sister was looking at me too, and I thought of absolutely none of that. I thought about East Portland. I thought about the woman who had come into my emergency department at 3 in the morning with a blood pressure so high she was almost seizing, who had no primary care doctor and hadn't seen a physician in 6 years because she didn't know how to navigate the system. I thought about what it meant to build something that made it easier for her to get help before things got that bad. I thanked Dr. Vance. I thanked Renata. I thanked my residents. I said the things that were true. And then I said one more thing, because I have never been able to resist the truth when it wants to come out. I said, I also want to thank everyone who ever made me feel like I wasn't enough. You were wrong, and I am deeply grateful you were wrong, because proving it has been the most interesting project of my life. The room laughed. Some people cheered. I didn't mean it as a joke, but I let them take it however they needed. I walked off the stage. I did not go back to my table immediately. I stopped at the edge of the stage stairs and I accepted a handshake from Dr. Vance and a brief hug from the OMA Foundation director. And by the time I turned back toward the room, I found myself looking directly at my sister. She was standing 10 feet away. She had crossed the ballroom. I don't know when. I don't know what she planned to say. Her face was doing something complicated, pride and guilt and surprise and something else I didn't have a name for, all running into each other at once. I looked at her. I let the moment be what it was. Then she said, very quietly, Claire. I said, hi Danielle. She said, I didn't know, I had no idea you were. She stopped. She started again. You changed your name. I did, I said. She looked at the award in my hands. She looked at me. She said, Mom doesn't know you're here. Mom doesn't know any of this. I know, I said. There was a long pause. Danielle said, she's going to want to call you. I thought about my mother. I thought about the Thanksgiving with the cold mashed potatoes. I thought about the bus pass. I thought about being told, at 17, that maybe I should find something I'd actually be good at. I said, she has my number if she wants to use it. She's always had my number. Danielle's eyes went a little bright. She said, you look really good, Claire. Thank you, I said. You too. And then Renata appeared at my elbow, with the expression of a woman who had been waiting all evening to celebrate, and had been very patient, and she pulled me into the crowd of people who wanted to shake my hand and talk about the East Portland project and ask me whether I was considering academic medicine, and Danielle was behind me, and then she was gone. My mother called me 11 days later. I was between shifts when I saw her name on my screen, for the first time in almost 4 years. I sat in my car in the hospital parking garage, and I looked at it ring. I thought about everything that call could be. I thought about what I wanted. I thought about the kind of life I had built, and the way it felt to walk onto that stage. I answered. She said, Danielle told me. I said, I know. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, I had no idea you were doing so well. I said, I know that too. She said, I want you to know that I'm proud of you. I sat with that for a moment. Proud. The word I had been waiting to hear my entire childhood, arriving now, long after I had stopped needing it from her. I had found other sources. I had found Renata, and I had found my residence, and I had found the version of myself who showed up at 3 in the morning when someone needed help. I said, thank you for saying that. She said, do you think you might come home sometime? For Christmas, maybe? I said, I'll think about it. That was true. I was thinking about it. But I was also thinking about the woman in East Portland, and my next shift, and the paper I was co-authoring with Renata about emergency access in urban underserved populations, and the apartment in Portland that had my name on the lease and a window that looked out over the West Hills and felt, every morning when I made my own coffee exactly the way I liked it, like exactly the right size, I was thinking about all of it, and for the first time in a long time, I wasn't thinking about what anyone else was going to say about any of it. I chose my work. I chose my city. I chose the name I gave myself, and the life I built with it. I chose myself, and if my mother wants to be part of that life, she's welcome to show up. But she's going to have to show up to the life I have, not the one she imagined for me, not the smaller, quieter version she always seemed to prefer. I am not that person anymore. I'm not sure I ever was.